I'm June Mitchell. I have been interested with politics all the time, not politics, but making the world or the province or the country as good as it can be. And one of the most exciting times in that regard was the coming of Medicare to Saskatchewan in the early days. I was lucky enough to know a lot of the people who were involved because my husband was a public servant. My mother was an MLA in Tommy Douglas's government, in Woodrow Lloyd's and Ross Thatcher's governments. She never was defeated. She finally retired. My mom was a tough lady, and my mom was a person who respected everybody. It started right in Douglas's mind, and I'm sure and other people will have thought of it too, but it was always strong in his mind because it was very important in his own life. It was only the kindness of a doctor who was willing to take him as a patient without pay that he was able to walk and be the person that he grew up to be. Medicare was proposed. The doctors were worried. The insurance companies and the American Medical Association had lots of money and were able to advertise and get people worked up and afraid of stuff that wasn't going to happen, such as that you couldn't pick your own doctor. Well, there's all the struggle, all the fear, all the fight, if you can call it that, the cruel things that went on. People were really worried. Then comes the elections to get the power to do something, and the struggle to get it in place. In the middle of that, and the guy who started it goes off to become our head of a new party. But the fight was on, and there was always the people. What came out of this was the KOD, the Keep Our Doctors, it was called. And it grew and grew in Saskatchewan. At the legislative buildings, there was a meeting that was the biggest, a protest that was the biggest protest. I've been in lots of little ones, but the biggest protest that you ever saw, or that I ever saw, the police said 4,000, the KOD said 10,000. The whole front of the legislative buildings, right down to the water, was covered with people afraid of losing their doctors. A lot of us who felt that we were in favor of Medicare had wanted to carry around petitions and hold meetings and stuff. Woodrow Lloyd, who was premier at that time, asked us not to. He said, we don't need more fuss. And looking back, I think he was absolutely right about that. Walter Erb resigned. He was Minister of Health and didn't believe in Medicare. So he resigned. Alan Blakeney became the Minister of Health at that point. The doctors went on strike. It was very nasty. It was very nasty. I'll tell you the difference about both sides. This is as I remember it. On the one side, my dad wouldn't let any of us answer the phone or let my mom. Well, you didn't let my mom, but he took all the phone calls because there were obscene phone calls to my mother and threatening phone calls. Woodrow Lloyd, they got into his garage, sliced up his tent, and left a sign saying, "Do you know where your children are?" That's how bad it got, and they showed pictures of Tommy Douglas, and Woodrow Lloyd was in too. It's within that time. They both had the pictures of them with ropes around their necks. Now on the other side, my friend Phyllis Levin, who was sane as far as I knew, took her lipstick and wrote something about being in favor of Medicare on the windshields of the people at the big rally again, Keep Our Doctors rally. So there was trouble on both sides, but it was not to the same extent. The fear was really on the other side. I'm sure it was difficult for some because it meant leaving patients, and that it wasn't in the doctor's idea that they should neglect patients because of a strike. A lot of us got together and started the community clinics. The reason we started the clinics was because the strike was on. We didn't know how long the strike would last. It could have lasted forever as far as we knew. So what we did was get co-ops going. And as co-ops, we could hire people to come and doctor people who are sick. How do you feel about scabs? They didn't like it at all, and that's when that lasted for a long time with the clinic doctors. The clinic doctors were there and working, but the hospitals would not give them hospital privileges. That was the fight that I felt I had to get into, that I had to leave my doctor and go to a clinic doctor to stand with the people who couldn't get help, when couldn't have their doctor come. I'll tell you some of the things that happened during that time. Anne Blakeney, whose husband was eventually premier, but at that time was a cabinet minister. She had her baby at home, and Walter Smissick, who was also a cabinet minister, his wife had her baby at home. They got a mediator, and it was Lord Taylor from England. People trusted him, both the doctors and the government, and so they came to a compromise. First of all, they were planning on paying the doctors a salary. That was one thing that they gave up, the government gave up. But the second thing was that people did not have a chance to just go and get it done, and the doctors get paid by the government. The people had to pay the doctors, and then they had to apply to the government to get the money back. This Taylor thing came in just in time for me to be the first person to have a baby in the hospital with a clinic doctor. by the time the election came, they hadn't had a chance to really know how Medicare was going to work. There were elections, 2 elections that year, or at the end of that trouble. Woodrow Lloyd was defeated, and Tommy Douglas ran in a constituency in Regina and was defeated. And my feeling, and a lot of people's feeling, is that both of them lost because of Medicare. That's what I can remember Tommy standing on a table and quoting the Scottish guy, I lie me down and bleed a while, and then I'll rise and fight again. I'll never forget that night. Thatcher got in, I think, change, get rid of this heavy-handed government, I think, sort of idea. Just get rid of the socialists. I don't know who would have done it, but Saskatchewan people, they're stubborn, and they will see that things get done. And Saskatchewan people, of course, were used to working together. You can't be a farmer and not have people come and help you if you're sick and your crop has to come off. The Saskatchewan spirit is still here. And it certainly was a good place for it to start. And we muddled through, and we fought it through, and we got there. But there's still the drip, drip, drip of getting over the hurt of the fight, and getting back to just treating each other as ordinary people. Being the kind of people that were in the government at that time, it was right. It was the right thing to do.